Reading from the book of 2 Kings. Today is November 14th. Our reading from 2 Kings is chapter 9. Then the prophet Elisha summoned one of the disciples of the prophets and said to him, "Tie up your skirts and take along this flask of oil and go to Ramoth Gilead. When you arrive there, go and see Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi. Get him to leave his comrades and take him into an inner room. Then take the flask of oil and pour some on his head, and say, 'Thus said the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel.' Then open the door and flee without delay." The young man, the servant of the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. When he arrived, the army commanders were sitting together. He said, "Commander, I have messages for you." "For which one of us?" Jehu asked. He answered, "For you, Commander." So Jehu arose and went inside, and the disciples poured oil on his head and said to him, "Thus said the Lord, the God of Israel, I anoint you king over the people of the Lord, over Israel. You shall strike down the house of Ahab, your master. Thus will I avenge on Jezebel the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of the other servants of the Lord. The whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off every male belonging to Ahab, bond and free in Israel. I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, son of Ahijah. The dogs shall devour Jezebel in the fields of Jezreel, with none to bury her." Then he opened the door and fled. Jehu went out to the other officers of his master, and they asked him, "Is all well? What did that madman come to you for?" He said to them, "You know the man and his ranting." "You're lying," they said. "Tell us the truth." Then he replied, "Thus and thus," he said. "Thus said the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel." Quickly each man took his cloak and placed it under him on the top step. They sounded the horn and proclaimed, "Jehu is king." Thus Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Joram and all Israel had been defending Ramoth Gilead against King Hazael of Aram. But King Joram had gone back into Jezreel to recover from the wounds which Arameans had inflicted on him in battle with King Hazael of Aram. Jehu said, "If such is your wish, allow no one to slip out of the town to go and report this in Jezreel." Then Jehu mounted his chariot and drove to Jezreel, for Joram was lying ill there, and King Uzziah of Judah had gone down to visit Joram. The lookout was stationed on the tower to Jezreel. He saw the troops of Jehu as he approached. He called out, "I see a troop." Joram said, "Dispatch a horseman to meet them and let him ask, 'Is all well?'" The horseman went to meet him, and he said, "The king inquires, 'Is all well?'" Jehu replied, "What concern of yours is whether all is well? Fall in behind me." The lookout reported, "The messenger has reached them but has not returned back." So he sent out a second horseman. He came to them and said, "Thus said the king, 'Is all well?'" Jehu answered, "What concern of yours is it whether all is well? Fall in behind me." And the lookout reported, "The messenger has reached them but has not turned back, and it looks like the driving of Jehu, son of Nimshi, who drives wildly." Joram ordered, "Hitch up the chariot." They hitched up his chariot, and King Joram of Israel and King Ahaziah of Judah went out, each in his own chariot, to meet Jehu. They met him at the field of Naboth in Jezreelite. When Joram saw Jehu, he asked, "Is all well, Jehu?" But Jehu replied, "How can all be well as long as your mother Jezebel carries on her countless harlotries and sorceries?" Thereupon Joram turned his horses around and fled, crying out to Ahaziah, "Treason, Ahaziah!" But Jehu drew his bow and hit Joram between the shoulders, so that the arrow pierced his heart, and he collapsed in his chariot. Jehu thereupon ordered his officer Bidkar, "Pick him up and throw him in the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember how you and I were riding side by side behind his father Ahab when the Lord made his pronouncement about him. I swear I have taken note of the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons yesterday, declares the Lord, and I will requite you in this plot, declares the Lord. So pick him up and throw him unto the plot in accordance with the word of the Lord." On seeing this, King Ahaziah of Judah fled along the road to Beth-Hagan. Jehu pursued him and said, "Shoot him down too." And they shot him in his chariot at the ascent of Gur, which is near Iblim. He fled to Megiddo and died there. His servants conveyed him in a chariot to Jerusalem, and they buried him in his grave with his fathers in the city of David. Ahaziah had become king over Judah in the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab. Jehu went on to Jezreel. When Jezebel heard of it, she painted her eyes with kohl and dressed her hair, and she looked out of the window. As Jehu entered the gates, she called out, "Is all well, Zimri, murderer of your master?" He looked up toward the window and said, "Who is on my side? Who?" And 2 or 3 eunuchs leaned out toward him. "Throw her down," he said. They threw her down, and her blood spattered on the wall and on the horses, and they trampled her. Then he went inside and ate and drank, and he said, "Attend to that cursed woman and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." So they went to bury her, but all they found of her were the skull, the feet, and the hands. They came back and reported to him, and he said, "It is just as the Lord spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite. The dogs shall devour the flesh of Jezebel in the field of Jezreel, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be like dung on the ground in the field of Jezreel, so that none will be able to say, 'This was Jezebel.'"